If you knew there was a golden egg, you would do anything in your day to find it. So that's how you have to treat your brain. Unless you are looking out for it, you're going to miss it. And that's the same way with joy.
Ever feel like you're in a constant competition between your career and your husband's patience? Your kids think you work too hard, but hey, you're doing it all for them, right? The struggle is real, and I've been there too. Moments of feeling like a crappy mom and wife because once again, your kids had breakfast on their way to school, and you've got more important things on your plate than cooking and cleaning. Hey there, working moms who are juggling a million things and still wondering if you're doing it right. I'm Veronica Cisneros, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a mama of 3, and married for 24 years. Welcome to the Empowered and Unapologetic podcast, where we dive deep into the messy, chaotic, and sometimes hilarious world of mastering motherhood, marriage, and business. I get it. Balancing it all was never the goal, but here we are trying anyway. I'm here to share my journey and guide you through yours. No more apologies for being driven, and definitely no compromises on your dreams. Together, we'll navigate the challenges of being a powerhouse in both business and family life. Join me as we tackle the uncomfortable conversations from being the breadwinner to changing the rules of what a marriage looks like. Let's figure out how to parent in a working parent household without the constant arguments or guilt. I'm Veronica Cisneros, and this is Empowered and Unapologetic, where we embrace the chaos, challenge the norms, and strive to live life on our own terms. Get ready for some real talk, actionable tips, and a few laughs along the way. Hey, ladies, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowered and Unapologetic podcast. I'm your host, Veronica Cisneros. Today's guest is Dr. Shahana Alibhai. She is a TEDx speaker, family physician, and best-selling author of Feel Better, endorsed by Mel Robbins. As the medical director of BC's largest youth healthcare center, she has dedicated her career to helping individuals navigate mental health challenges with compassion and clarity. Her work has been featured on CTV and Global News as her powerful quote, "We do not suffer from a lack of joy, simply a lack of recognizing it." It has inspired countless individuals and was included in an award-winning planner distributed at the Oscars. Dr. Shahana combines her medical expertise with relatable, actionable tools to help people improve their mental wellness and reclaim their joy, especially during challenging times like the holidays. Today, your key takeaways from this podcast episode will be why we chronically misinterpret emotions and how to recognize them instead, how to avoid the holiday joy trap and create a season filled with authentic happiness, and simple practical tools to prioritize emotional wellness, even with a busy schedule. So please help me by welcoming Dr. Shahana Alibhai. Hey!
Thank you so much for having me. What a kind introduction. And we couldn't have chosen a better time, a better season to have these discussions because the holiday season is right around the corner. And I think we do get so much wrong with regards to our emotions. I know I do. And I can't wait to share what I've learned along the way.
I have to tell you, my practice, we have been flooded with just so many people struggling. So many. And usually in my sessions, when I meet with my patients, there'll be really big highs, really big lows, but there tends to be this, every other hour where there's just this intense energy, right?
Yeah.
People are struggling. But then after that, I'll have one, uplifted, ready to go, like different seasons, right? In different times of their journey, right? In different levels of progress. And lately, holy moly, it's just been this intense, overwhelming feeling where some of my patients have even mentioned feeling as if they're in purgatory, like just intense. And so I am so glad we are recording this episode. I I want you to help us help our listeners really change that up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
It's hard. It's hard. I think what you mentioned too is that we've chronically become very used to feeling, because we think of there's good emotions and there's bad emotions, and that's
No.
the first lie. That's
Yeah.
the first misconception.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as good or bad.
No.
Right? I like to frame it as comfortable and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? When I was growing up, it was always that you can't feel bored. How dare you feel bored? Like, bored was a 4-letter word, and now we need to embrace, you know what I mean? Like, so the pendulum swung. But this idea that actually a lot of us have become very comfortable with uncomfortable emotions. I call it your emotional bed. That when things are extremely stressful, you feel very anxious, you feel very overwhelmed, there's usually one default emotion that we all resort to. And you might not recognize it in yourself, but you sure as well recognize it in your partner or your kids. Mm-hmm. For a lot of people, it's anger. Like, it's blaming everybody else. Yep. Always your problem. Yep. Right? For me, the minute that I can't handle two things, it's overwhelmed. Like as if too much. But when you figure out what your emotional bed is, that is because just like trying to lay there on a Monday morning, your bed is comfortable, even though it's an uncomfortable emotion. So we have to realize that those railroad tracks that are in our brain have actually solidified over decades. We've become very chronically good at feeling this one kind of emotion. But if you think of emotions as a compass, they're trying to point you in different directions. But if you're only feeling one thing at one time, you're missing out on the full view.
I couldn't agree with you more. Oftentimes when I ask my patients, how are you feeling? I'll hear anger, happy, sad, and maybe afraid. And it's like, no. Take me even deeper. Take me even further. And I literally will give them an emotion wheel. And it's like, okay, you said anger, from that spot, from that circle, go out. What are you really feeling? And it's like dread. I'm feeling dread. I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling envious. I'm feeling frustrated. And it's like, okay, now you're giving me more, right?
Exactly. And we've all played, I have young kids still, so we've all done that thing when you put sand through a funnel and you can see it kind of funnel down. I have to think a lot of the times that at the core of so many of those uncomfortable emotions is fear. Yeah. And we're so, just like our society's we're really good about talking about values, but really it's like, I value family. No, that doesn't give me information. We're also really not good at talking about our fears because we're taught to not be afraid and not to fear anything. And we're completely closed up. But then you break open this crowd of people when I'm giving a keynote or talking, and it's fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of something bad happening, on and on and on it goes. And suddenly you're like, so much of that dread, anticipation, anger, frustration, disappointment, at the core of it is one of those fears. And until I'd like to think of your fears, my kids went bowling yesterday. Your fears are like bowling pins. Your job in your life is to identify them and knock them down, but you can't knock them down without calling it out and putting a voice after it. Absolutely. Your book, Feel Better, has been widely celebrated. What inspired you to focus on the intersection of mental health and recognizing joy? You might describe this as well. When you are in a position of helping others, it's actually really lovely to advocate and counsel and support and do all that stuff. But until it affects you, until the bee actually stings you, then you're like, oh shit, that's not fun. Like, no, did not like that at all. It was, we're speaking to a group of women here, but this morning, actually, I was rushing back from the hospital because I went for my first mammo and ultrasound. I work in the breast health clinic. I've worked there for 10 years, never gotten a mammo, never gotten an ultrasound. And I'm like, oh, now I have to do it? Yeah. Like, we think that we're kind of, I'll call myself above all of that. Like, I can help you, but no, that's never going to be a me problem. Yep. And then it became a big time me problem. Yeah. After the birth of my first son, I suffered with postpartum OCD and anxiety and depression. And all of that didn't come in a vacuum. That was there for decades before. I always joke that your body will whisper, whisper, whisper. And if you continue to not listen, it will scream. And that was the
1,000%.
screaming moment for me. And I just had to figure out how, after spending 11 years of trying to study health, which I wasn't, I was studying disease and illness, did it come to that? And what lever could I pull? What could I do to take a preventative approach? And yes, I work with youth, and yes, I work with a lot of vulnerable youth. So if I didn't know all of this stuff,
Yeah.
how do they learn any of this
Mhm.
too? So it was putting my own journey. I think you always write your first book for you, and this was a great example of that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I appreciate you sharing your story with us. The holidays can feel overwhelming for working moms juggling careers, family, and expectations. Why do you think joy feels so elusive during this time of year?
I think we wait for that moment to be right. We wait for our to-do list to be empty,
Yep.
which
Never.
newsflash, it
No.
never is going to be,
No.
ever,
No.
ever. And because even if you think it is, then it's like, oh shoot, I need to order new shoes for my
Oh
kids.
yeah,
Like,
we'll add to it. We will
will
make things. We'll make
out of
things up.
thin air. Suddenly, like I need to do that now,
Yep.
right? So just like your to-do list is never going to be done, that perfect moment, I can only speak for myself, but I've been waiting. It actually doesn't come. My sister and I like to joke that when you take that family photo, I wish you could take a photo of both a before and after.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like the chaos that goes into it and the chaos that ensues after it. That is real life.
Mhm.
So that's where I came up with this concept for me that's really helped me, called joy stretching. This idea that my kids, I don't know why they do this, but they take gum out of their mouth and then they'll stretch it really, really, really long to see
Yeah.
how far it can happen. And then
I do
they
that
put
too
it-
sometimes.
Exactly. Know that, like even silly putty, like how far
Yeah.
can I stretch this? And I started to realize too that, there are these moments all around me constantly, but I'm too busy either thinking about the past, thinking about the
Yes.
future to actually realize it's here. It's not going to get better than this.
Mhm.
Hugging your kid after they've actually washed their hair. Both of my kids play hockey, so we said you need to wash your hair every day because
Pretty
that helmet
please.
stinks.
Pretty please. Yeah.
Right. So when you sniff their hair, and it's like you have that 3 seconds or 10 seconds, think about that piece of gum and how are you going to elongate that one moment that I and many of us take for granted. And you do that through the senses, right? What can you actually smell right then? What can you taste right then? What can you feel right then? Because that is what takes that gum and makes it last longer, right?
Mhm.
And I think that quote that we don't suffer from a lack of joy just from a lack of recognizing it. I was parked one time and there was a lady right beside me and she looked really flustered. And for whatever reason, I looked over at her, gave her a big smile. She gave me a big smile. And we both drove on our merry way. That was years ago, but that silent interaction brought me more joy than, a $10 cup of Starbucks coffee,
Mhm.
So I think we just need to start opening our eyes because this is it. It doesn't get better than this.
No, I just watched this video and it was saying how if you're 44 years old, that 56% of your life is gone. And I heard that and I was just like, oh, not today, Satan, not today. It was just like, holy moly. It really put things into perspective, like 56%. And it's like, no, I have so many more days to live. There's so much. I'm going to be 112 with Botox and fillers. Like, what do we talk about? What are we talking about here? And it's so true. And I think about, there have been times where, I need to get to the office and then, I'm rushing to the office and I need to attack this meeting, meet with my financial advisor, meet with my marketing team, meet with my patients and boom, 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 just constant, like all of these things. Do I need a pee? Not really. I could save that for later. And just, right. Just really, really going into what I need to do.
Yeah.
In reality, that's not the life at all I want to live.
Yeah.
So I want to go into, you've said we do not suffer from a lack of joy, simply a lack of recognizing it.
Yes.
With everything that I just shared, because I know a lot of my listeners, they're like, me too, Veronica, me too.
Yeah.
Right? How can our listeners start recognizing the joy that already exists in their lives? I really want you to teach us.
Good, very good question too. So I think it's the first notion is that, I'm glad you mentioned that it's already there. So one of the things is and I hate to take it back, but yes, there's a principle of being present in the moment. It's really hard to be mindful if you are always ruminating about the past or thinking about the future too. So it doesn't have to be always, and I totally get this, but using things that you do every single day. So for example, on your drive, right? So typically I'll always have something distracting me. What if you were quiet? What if you were just quiet from not even for 5 minutes, but from traffic light to traffic light? Could you do that at least, right?
Yeah.
And could you in that moment notice what's around you? That is just getting like dipping your toe into the water of what it feels like to be awake in that moment. Because just like the emotional bed, all of this running around back and forth, meeting with people, it feels good. It's scratching an itch because productivity has become our new caffeine.
Yeah.
Right? We love it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm hitting a point too, because I wonder if there's ever a story of someone who says, I'm on my deathbed, I'm so glad I was so productive. I don't hear it.
You never hear it. No, the ones that are on their deathbed that are so productive, I can't think of their names, but they've all said, I missed it. Yeah. Something to that effect. I've missed it. 100%. Spend time with your family, spend time with your loved ones. We get so caught up in this chase. And I will honestly admit, I am guilty of it too. When you say, the to-do list, it's never going to be done. And I'm like, to hell, it's not. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Right.
Exactly.
But I love how you gave us that kind of, work and busy, and the to-do list has been our replacement for our coffee. Like,
yes. Yeah. And I think it's really, and I'll say women, because it can be really hard as women to go, you can see how, even when you talk about what you do, you love it. You wouldn't do it if you didn't love it. So you can be two things. I love writing the book, and I, for the most part, love seeing patients. I love that aspect of my life. And I was telling my kids the other day, they're like, Mommy, why do you work? And I said, I also want to show you that modeling, that it's okay to go after your dreams and do things. And I call it coloring outside the lines, because a lot of the times people will say, why are you speaking and writing? You should be seeing patients. Like, as a physician, it's kind of almost frowned upon.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And I'm like, I would be a crappy doctor if I was 9 to 5, 9 to 9, whatever. You wouldn't want to see me, because then the cynicism would build in. Then that element of burnout, because I'd look at you and go, okay, just another I call it fast food medicine. Next. This provides that sort of relief too. So you can love and want to chase and do all the things that you want to do. And you can also open your eyes to go, what in that day, I call it like a scavenger hunt. If I told you right now in your day, you need to look out for the emotion, maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's respect, maybe it's like fill in the blank, look out for a positive emotion. And just like you sprinkle Easter eggs around the house when it's, finding time for your Easter egg hunt, if you knew there was a golden egg, you would do anything in your day to find it. So that's how you have to treat your brain. Unless you are looking out for it, you're going to miss it. And that's the same way with joy. So if I told you I'm giving you $100 at the end of the day, you can just name for me 3 ways that you've seen joy today, you damn well are going to get that, right?
Hell yeah.
But otherwise, if you don't have that intention ahead of time, and then you also have to feel the benefit. You have to go, okay, now that I saw that, I had one patient who was, who did have a very suspicious breast lump, and we were walking through that, and I kind of looked at her, put my hand on her shoulder. I'm like, it's going to be, we're going to get through this year together. And she's like, you know what, Dr. Alibhai, she's like, joy is there. She's like, right now, I just have to squint. Right?
Beautiful.
Sometimes it's eyes wide open. Sometimes it's really squinting.
Yes.
But it's,
right? Oh my gosh, I want to give her a hug right now.
I know looking for the right therapist can be challenging. However, feeling overwhelmed and disconnected is even harder. Life is filled with several twists and turns, some more severe than others. We do our best to handle them as they come and find ourselves at a loss, not knowing what to do or who to turn to. The clinicians here at Outside the Norm Counseling are here to help. We are here to assist you through this time of need. Together, we will identify your strengths and goals and teach you healthy coping skills. Together, we will develop a plan to help you live the life you want to live. Our team is compassionate, genuine, and we take a great deal of pride in providing an empathetic, non-judgmental approach to all of our clients. It's time. You've waited long enough, whether it be for you, your child, or if you're in need of a couple session. We are highly trained clinicians ready to guide you. Schedule an appointment now by calling 951-395-3288. Again, that number is 951-395-3288. We're looking forward to meeting you and being a part of your journey.
For working moms, the holiday season often feels like a race to meet expectations. What's one step they can take to shift from overwhelm to intention?
Oh, yeah. So, you know what? Unless you are hanging a decoration on your tree called Baby's First Christmas, we have all lived through a Christmas before, right? Like, this is not our first Christmas. So, if all you need to do is practice the power of anticipation, and I'll explain too. You can picture probably what your Christmas is going to be like, but you can also picture what are some of the triggers that you might have. This might be your sister-in-law, it might be your brother-in-law, it might be the uncle who never shuts up. Like you know what that might sound and feel like. We are so used to having our knee-jerk reaction as if we've never experienced that before. And we're like, I can't believe she said that. Well, she said that last year and she said that the year before. And so you need to figure out what's a stimulus for you? What's a trigger for you? You can obviously predict what your outcome is going to be. And I know this as I'm talking about it too. And then very similar, when I was growing up, I used to read those choose your own adventure books. You need to be able to come up with an alternate narrative, not for that person, not for your sister-in-law, not for your brother-in-law, not for your crazy uncle, for you.
Yes.
You need to think of maybe they're acting that way because maybe they're insecure. Maybe they don't get enough validation. Okay. Does that soften it? Emotions are not meant to change. Just like you leave butter out on the counter, you're supposed to soften your emotions. And through softening it, you can start to think differently. So coming up with your stimulus and your trigger and coming up with an alternative narrative as to why, so you can pick your own adventure and choose your own ending. And the other key piece too is understanding the role of expectation. So when you go and hang your clothes at night, there's usually a horizontal clothing rack. So you go through your day with a level or a horizontal line of expectation, right? You're late for your meeting, below the line. Someone cuts you off in traffic, below the line. When have you ever in your day stopped and said, I've accomplished everything I need to accomplish. I am totally ahead of the game. Above the line doesn't happen to me, right? So it's not about changing your effort. It's just being aware that you have this invisible line because stress is expecting something different to happen than it actually happens. So if it falls below the line, you perceive that as stress. We don't even know that there was a line there. So there's a lovely saying, and a lot of us have heard this idea of the double arrow, right? If you got shot with one arrow, that would hurt. If you got shot with two arrows, that would really hurt. The first arrow is the what that's happened to you. Like the breast cancer diagnosis, which is an extreme example, getting cut off in traffic. Can't control that. But the how you react to that is the second arrow. That is what you can control. It doesn't mean that you don't accept your emotions. I'm not saying I don't feel anything. No, that's not the point. Feel it, acknowledge it, accept it, and then move and hopefully move on, right? But it's the fanning, I call it fanning the flames of your emotion by ruminating it, by talking about it. Allow your emotions to be energy in motion. They come and they go. But I love fanning the flames of my emotion because I want to tell everybody about what happened to me today, right?
Me too.
And that just keeps it alive.
Can you give us a real life example of your steps 1 and 2? So I appreciate how you're really asking the audience to identify what is going on for them as opposed to brush it under the rug. So let's say working mom, right? She's on her way to the office right now, or she's actually in the office. What can she do right now to implement this skill, and how can she do it?
No, really good question too. So, I think there's a couple of things. The first thing that I would recommend for her is think about the 3 S's, because that really helps you understand what your emotions are trying to tell you. So she's in the office, she's maybe flustered, she realizes that things have not been going her way. She's perceiving that as stress. Okay, fine. The first S is, what sensation do you feel in your body? Because most of the time we completely ignore that. What, you don't judge it, but what does that feel like for you? My chest is tight, my, heart is racing, whatever that happens to be, right? The second step is, what is the story I'm telling myself in my head? And this is really important for women. So this is what I talk about. What traps are you falling into? And I call it sand traps, just because, like, in golf, when your ball lands in the sand trap, that's not so good. Is it the I shoulds? I should be doing this. Are you shoulding all over yourself? I have to be doing this. I can't. I never, right? We don't get into other people's heads. We don't know how this sounds, but putting yourself down in a very insidious way sounds like that. The I shoulds, the I have to, I nevers, and I can't. Are you falling into that trap? And what story are you not telling yourself, but selling yourself?
Yes.
That's what you're doing, is you're selling yourself. Oh, see, I never can do that. See, I always mess up. See, why even try? You are the best salesperson you've ever met. That's the truth of the matter. And the last S is significance. Why does this shake you? Why does this bother you in the first place? I was talking to somebody, and a big trigger for her is that when people show up late. And we got to talking, and she's like, my parents were always, always, always late to everything. And for me, that shows that they're disrespecting me, my time. So it was so much more than that. But why does this incident rattle you? And you will find out, maybe you really value respect or fairness or honesty or justice, whatever the case might be. But then you're framing it as a value system and not as something that you're pissed off about.
I love that. Love that. How can moms teach their kids to embrace emotional awareness, especially during such a high pressure season?
Yeah. You know what? The best advice I can give all moms, all parents out there, is don't be afraid of modeling. And modeling does not mean walking a tightrope of emotions. It does not mean being perfect. It does not mean anything of that. It means having a reaction, but then going back to it. It means rupture and repair. A lot of us grew up in a household where it was rupture in terms of relationship, but no repair. I'll give you a quick story, but just the other day, I am definitely more of the softer parent with my 3 kids. A little candy, but for breakfast, whatever, fine. My husband, no, not so much at all. So my mother-in-law was visiting, and, especially being Indian parents and all this rest of it, I'm trying to still make a good impression in front of my mother-in-law. And my husband reamed me out in front of the kids for being, very candy focused, that you can do whatever you want in the morning. You can't do this and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. I just went upstairs, and of course, my initial emotion was anger. I was so mad at my husband.
I'm surprised you survived.
How dare you do that? Like, I call it the emotional sandwich. Like, it's never just one thing. No. It's like a BLT. There's layer and layer. But what is the predominant flavor of that sandwich? And for me, it wasn't anger. It was embarrassment.
Yes.
I was so deeply. So I walked back downstairs. I looked at my mother-in-law, and my kids were there, and they were like, I don't know where to look. I don't know where to look.
What do we do?
Mommy's feeling really embarrassed right now. I said, Daddy probably was right in what he was saying, but how he said it was not appropriate. He should have taken me back, talked to me, not in front of his mom or my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law gave me a big hug, and she's like, don't worry, I'm going to tell my son something as well, too.
She's like, I got you.
I got you. She told me afterwards, she's like, he is never doing that again.
Never.
But naming was that hard in front of my mother-in-law, my husband, and my kids to see mommy feels embarrassed? Oh, anger is so much easier because you feel like, actually, like I'm angry at you, but no. So that was a great example of going this, and then it was repair. Okay, we can move past that too. So I think if you are able to name what you're feeling and actually identify why you have your reaction, that is okay. All I ask is circle back to it with your kids.
I love that you gave that example. There are so many, I'm going to say so many times. There are so many times where I'd like to say that I am, I have all the answers as a mom, right? Especially as a therapist. I'd like to say that, with all of the parenting classes that I've taken, that I'm like straight A student. The reality is that that's a complete lie. Yeah. And I can't tell you how many times, maybe because I wasn't aware of where I was at emotionally, that, I acted out or allowed my emotions to lead. The conversations, though, when I circle back to my kids,
Mm-hmm.
are, it's not that I'm so glad I lost it, but the conversations that incident allowed me to have really helped me develop this deeper relationship with my kids. And they know mom is flawed, and they know mom is aware that she is flawed, that she is a human being.
Oh, and
right?
Then so when they do it, then they're not as scared to go, oh shoot, I flew off the handles, or I'm having this big, we get really good when, really good is a strong word, but when my kids were toddlers, it's like, you're having a big feeling. And then suddenly after the age of 3, and then fast forward, we just don't talk about it anymore, right?
No, it's true.
Mommy's having a big feeling too. So all of that is acceptable. And I think the messaging here is that expectation. We put so much on the mom, the woman usually, to hold it all together with the bow on top and everything is perfect. Actually, you learn more with the contrary as well too. So just an invitation to go, we've all been there too. And just, it doesn't have to be circling back in that moment. Cool off. It can be the next day or even the next couple of days. But when you do it, you will feel so much more like, because it starts to kind of synthesize what you went through, and your kids can see you putting it all together.
Yes, my teens will circle back, and they'll, I'll get a text message, from them while they're in school. We'll talk about that later. But I'll get a text message from them saying, I love you. Or they'll circle back and type up whatever. And it's like, oh, that feels so good. It feels so good to watch them as well hold themselves accountable, right?
Completely, right? And that's where, you know what, that's going to serve them so well in the future too, right? Yes. And if for us, we're learning it most of us in our generation, we're learning this for the first time, right? It's a little bit clunky, and like, we're like a toddler trying to walk, right? We're like, okay, and hopefully they will be more prepared from our clunkiness, right?
Absolutely. You've worked with organizations and individuals struggling with mental health. What's the one tool or habit you recommend most to help shift out of negative thought patterns?
So I call it the concept of your inner radio. And it was an individual I was working with, and he was 20 years old. He was 3 years late to graduate. He was smoking too much weed, drinking too much alcohol. And he would tell me, he's like, every time I want to go do something, like go to school, handed the assignment, he's like, this radio station just comes on in my head. And he called it the F it radio, right? And I think that tool of understanding that you have 2 levers to pull. We all have this radio in our head. I call it your inner narrator. People have your own label for it. But there's 2 choices. One is to change the channel and start speaking to yourself more kindly. The other one is to turn down the volume. Most of us just turn down the volume. And how do we do that? There's very healthy ways of doing that. Go for a run, go for a walk, talk to a friend, all the things that fall under the bubble bath of self-care, right? And there's maybe really good things that feel great in the short term, but don't serve you well in the long term. 1 glass of wine becomes 3 episodes of Netflix becomes 10, right? Great way to turn down the volume. Netflix and wine, amazing. But so I think when you think about it that way, if you're going to turn down the volume with Netflix and wine, go right ahead. Just know what you're doing.
Yes.
Like, be conscious to what you're doing, that I just need to turn down this volume. It's too much. I'd much rather you do it eyes wide open than go, I'm just suppressing, because that's what I did for most of my life.
Yeah, me too.
And if you are going to change the channel, then practicing Kristen Neff's work on self-compassion, which we can't poo-poo and say, oh, it's just nothing. It actually is very valid and legitimate. Going, how, in one really easy way, super easy way, is by Dr. Ethan Kross in the book Chatter. He talks about talking to yourself in the third person. Don't say you, don't say I, say your name. So if we want something easy that women can do right now, use your name when you're talking to yourself. It creates a little bit of distance. And with that distance, you can be a little bit more kind to yourself.
Love that. For women who feel stuck in emotional cycles, what's one question they can ask themselves to begin breaking free?
Yeah. my favorite question is, what would that say about me?
Yes. Yes.
Not why, but what? What would that? And then you, just like you take a shovel, go deeper.
Yep.
Go deeper. You might just get 3 shovels in and you're like, I don't know. That's where you need the help of a professional and to really go the 7 layers deep. But even if you can ask yourself that question 2, 3, 4 times, what would that say about me?
Yeah.
And then you start to get to that core issue.
Absolutely. I'm going to tell you right now, when you come to me for that core issue, most of the time it goes down to I'm unworthy.
Yeah.
I'm unworthy.
Yeah.
You know, if that is true, what does it say about me?
Yeah.
If that is true, if it's true that I suck as a mom, or if it's true that, you know, I'm always late, or if it's true, whatever, fill in the blank. What does that say about me? Love that. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Because shame, and for me, shame is fear's evil cousin. Right. I think I can handle fear a lot more. Shame is filling in the blanks. That if I fear being alone, shame is I'm not worthy of connection. Right. That's the difference. And that is such a more deeper, because that goes right to your core of, even if all of this was around me, like a belt of chocolate, I can't even go and touch that chocolate, because that chocolate will never be for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How can we move from merely surviving the holidays to creating moments of genuine connection and happiness?
Yeah. You know, I think bringing it back full circle to that idea of joy stretching, right? I really invite everyone this holiday season just to play that game for my sake and for your sake too. On those days, like, try it. Three things, 5 things that actually legitimately can bring you joy, that are right there. And I want you to be surprised and thrilled and go, I never expected that. That playing, tic-tac-toe with my niece under the Christmas tree, which I would be like, whatever, is really fun and exciting, right? Like, and I think sometimes I want you to imagine a huge, big spotlight. We call it saliency, right? You can choose what you pay attention to, right? The mess in the kitchen is always going to be there. The arguing siblings are always going to be there. Your mother-in-law is always going to be there. But imagine a big spotlight on those moments that you would always taken for granted. Can you surprise yourself? I invite you to surprise yourself.
If you had to leave our listeners with one piece of advice about reclaiming their joy during the holidays, what would it be?
Yeah. So one thing that I love to do is, this goes back to the traffic light to traffic light analogy as well. All of us drive usually quite a lot, like I do too. I want you to play this game from traffic light to traffic light. I call it not the just gratitude list, but a gratitude flood. I want you to think of everything in your life, starting from the fact that you have a house, starting with the fact that you have clothes, all the way from one traffic light to another traffic light. Play it with your kids. And what you'll find is that you'll just like, oh my word, I have so much more than I ever expected, right? I think so much of the holidays comes with expectations for having the perfect tree, baking the perfect gingerbread cookie, having the perfect present. And I think we just have to shift that to go, just like that joy piece, it's already here. You already have it, right? So I think the idea that, once again, with that expectation bar, how can you be okay with what you have so far? And maybe part of that is feeling fulfilled in what you have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all you. I feel like you just gave us this complete educational class on joy. For those that want to follow you, want more, where can they find you?
Yeah, for sure. On my website, drshahana.com. The book Feel Better is available. The Big Umbrella is available on Amazon as well too. So that's kind of like a step-by-step cheat sheet in terms of everything that we just talked about today as well. Instagram, LinkedIn, all the social platforms. I'm there. Come say hi to me too. It's been such a pleasure. I think we need more of these platforms for connection, for feeling like you're not alone, and that we're just doing life together.
Absolutely. Thank you again for the words of inspiration, just the amount of insight you provided. I appreciate you and everything you're doing.
Thank you so much. You as well. Happy holidays.
Raise your hand if you are ready to level up your marriage for 2023. Do you find that you're spending your time together with your husband checked out and in front of the TV? I know you're ready for tangible strategies that actually get you results. Reignite the spark in your marriage, have fun, and grow together. Well, I hope you have your hand raised at this minute because I have something special for you. I'm introducing my brand new 6-question marriage predictor quiz that's gonna give you personalized results to catapult you into the next stage of your marriage journey. That means you'll receive the results to where your marriage can get the best help. If you've got just 1 minute, head to veronicacisneros.org/quiz. Again, that's veronicacisneros.org/quiz, and you could take my brand new quiz, Marriage Predictor. Get your results delivered right to your email address. Again, that's veronicacisneros.org/quiz, veronicacisneros.org/quiz. What's up, ladies? Just want to let you guys know that your ratings and reviews for this podcast are greatly appreciated. If you love this podcast, please go to iTunes right now, write a review, rate the episode, and subscribe. Don't forget to share it with your friends.